Hello. From June 13th to June 15th, 2022, the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce will be hosting the 16th edition of the Brazil-Canada Conference at PDAC, taking place in person in Toronto. We're also hosting the second Brazil-Canada Virtual Mining Conference at PDAC that started on March 7th. It will continue until May 31st. I'm Carolina Albernas, CEO of the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here today with Guillaume Legarret, Head South America at the Toronto Stock Exchange and TSX Venture Exchange, to talk about energy security and energy transition in light of their upcoming event about investment opportunities in the Brazilian energy sector that is taking place on April 27th. So Guillaume, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you for the invitation.
So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and about the TSX and TSX Venture Exchange presence in Latin America?
Yeah, thank you. So the TMX group made a decision in 2019 to have a full-time presence on the ground in LATAM. I'm currently based in Lima, but soon moving back to Brazil in a few months. Brazil is a very important market for us in terms of the renewable energy space that we'll talk about today, obviously about mining and also innovation. So we intend to get closer to potential issuers and around different ecosystems to help access capital on our markets. And it's interesting because the TMX group was the first international exchange to set up a local presence in South America in 2019. So we intend to make the most of that local footprint.
Amazing. So can you briefly explain the importance of the energy sector for the TMX group?
Yes, I mean, a lot of people think about the TMX group or TSX Venture that we're more like a mining exchange. Mining is a very important sector, and it's very closely linked also to the energy sector, talking about clean energy transition. So it's important to figure out that we have a strong, diversified issuer base, about 3,400 issuers, and the total market cap for our issuers on TSX and TSXV is around $4.3 trillion. So we are a very large and diversified exchange. Energy sector and mining are traditional sectors. They are currently account for, I would say, around 50% of the total market cap for TSX and TSX Venture, but we're seeing also a lot of interest and a lot of growth coming from international companies. And this is where I think today it's interesting to have this discussion, because we're trying to attract more international issuers, international companies on our market. Our focus in LATAM, as I mentioned earlier, is really around mining and energy, because we believe that these are the sectors that will benefit the most by accessing our capital markets. We have a strong investor base, a strong regulatory environment that supports the oil and gas sector. We shouldn't forget about oil and gas, talking about energy security to clean energy transition. It's important to figure out that oil and gas remains a very important sector and has a strong investor base. And our investors also have a deep understanding for investing in commodities and also renewable energy. So it's an interesting timing to talk about this, and more specifically about the power and renewable energy sector. We are at the TMX group, a global leader in the energy sector that is comprised of oil and gas, energy services, utilities, pipeline, renewable energy companies. There are 29 companies listed on TSX, TSXV with a market cap around $287 billion. So this is something that will grow in the future, but as of today, it is a strong sector. The power and renewable energy sector is a strong sector at TSX and the TSX Venture.
So in your perception, what is the current investor demand for renewables?
Well, you've heard in the past couple of years about the demand for renewable energy, but I'll provide you from the perspective from the TSX and the TSX Venture. And we see 5 main reasons for this, for renewable demand from investor. I think there's equity research analysts that are covering the power generation sector. They are also paying more attention to renewable energy companies, mostly because there's a trend for global decarbonization. I think this is quite obvious. And this provides also substantial organic growth and acquisition opportunities in the sector. This is the first reason. The second reason, we've seen installation and operational costs decreasing a lot to the point where there's economics of large scale with wind, solar, geothermal projects that are now competitive with those traditional electricity generating methods. So this is the second reason. Third reason is that many renewable energy companies are lowering their investment risk profile by entering into long-term production contracts with credit-worthy off-takers. So this is providing more certainty to investors around revenue and free cash flow. So this is the third reason. Fourth reason is that dividend-paying renewable energy companies are more and more attractive to income-oriented investors. And the fifth reason is that large, sophisticated institutional investors that are very a strong part of our investor base at TSX, we're talking about a 5 trillion institutional market, they are fulfilling their ESG mandates and directives by investing more and more into large renewable energy providers. So this is more in a nutshell, in 2 minutes, how we see the top 5 reasons for investor demand for renewable energy.
So Brazil is one of the largest energy producing countries in the world, with renewables composing almost 45% of Brazil's primary energy demand, which makes their energy sector one of the least carbon intensive in the world. The Brazilian national grid is made of almost 80% of renewable sources, mainly hydro and biofuels, but we're also seeing an increase on the percentage of wind, solar, and other renewable sources in the last couple of years, and a lot of projects as well being developed. With this in mind, what are the opportunities do you see in Brazil, specifically in the renewables energy sector?
Well, you've mentioned it, Carolina. It's really impressive to see the Brazil's energy matrix, 45% coming from renewables, but also fossil fuels remain an important part of the, it is the most important primary energy consumption. So the idea here, and this is what will be discussed during our next energy event in Brazil, is how do we find the right balance for investment between energy security and also the clean energy transition. And obviously, Brazil will remain a strong player in the oil and gas sector with the current geopolitical context, with the oil price above $100 a barrel. I think with Petrobras also getting more and more into the pre-salt generation with quality fuel, I think Brazil will remain an important sector for investment for the oil and gas. But then we need to find where the growth will come from in the renewable energy space. And you mentioned wind, solar, they have grown very quickly in the past couple of years. And this is where we find synergies with our markets. Our energy issuers are global players. They have assets all over the world. They have assets in LATAM. They attract also global capital. So as we see more carbon neutral policies from government, various governments in LATAM and in Brazil, we see also more companies moving up the value chain to support this transition to cleaner energy. So this is really gaining momentum. And the current geopolitical context also is helping, but also this is a trend we have seen in the past couple of years. So what do we see here in our markets? We see more startups in the pure power play, pure renewable energy space like wind, solar, hydro, geothermal, carbon capture, storage, and sequestration space, and also cleaner fuel manufacturers like biofuels and synthetic fuels. So what does it mean? That we're working to educate more LATAM and Brazilian companies that there is space on our market for startups. I wouldn't mention necessarily startups, but new companies that are active in this space. And our sector priorities in LATAM, we believe that TSX and TSX Venture are a strong platform for growth and to access capital. And our focus in LATAM is really on renewable energy producers. I mentioned wind, solar, hydro, the cleaner fuels, biofuels, synthetic fuels. We prefer to have a focus also on companies already with having producing assets, performing assets. We do not see a huge amount of potential in the short term for greenfield or brownfield assets, more like producing assets. And we see the minimum producing capacity of 100 megawatts and a strong growth pipeline. And this is like how to attract investments, how to connect with bankers is really to start with a strong producing capacity of 100 megawatts and also an interesting pipeline for growth. And also we see in terms of substantial revenues and market value, if we see independent power producers, IPPs, with revenues and market value in the range of 250 million. So this would be, I would say, our sector priorities in LATAM, and this would apply for Brazil, but there is market for those companies or smaller scale companies, I would say, on the TSX and the TSX venture.
And how the TMX supports potential issuers who want to raise capital on the TSX and the TSX Venture Exchange?
Well, we are a market where our investors are supporting strategic companies in mining, energy, renewable space. So this is the history of our markets. And Canada has a strong financial system, equity capital markets. The TSX, TSXV, a venture exchange, also are considered global markets for capital. What we see on our markets is that the daily trading is 40%, 40 to 50% of the daily trading comes from outside of Canada. So companies are really accessing local investors and international investors. 25% of member firms are also from outside of Canada. I mentioned also the access to our institutional investors. It is a 5 trillion institutional market in Canada. And obviously, as I mentioned in my comments earlier, they are trying to fulfill the ESG mandate. So companies have access to institutional investors in Canada. And there is a strong investor base for the energy sector. What's interesting also, well, Canada has a strong infrastructure to support the growth of renewable energy companies, but also a unique regulatory environment that supported and still supports today the oil and gas sector globally. So based with having this in mind, we believe that our energy issuers are global players, but also there is room to attract more international players on the TSX and the TSX venture. And how do we do this? We intend to be closer to the companies, but we intend to promote more our venture exchange also as an entry market to and access to the main board, which is the TSX. So these are two markets, and this is how we plan to play a more active role in Brazil, promoting both TSX venture and TSX.
So this is very interesting. So any final comments can you share with us? You mentioned this event that's coming up in April on the energy transition. Can you share with our audience a little bit more information about the upcoming event?
Well, not too much information. We want to make sure we have a lot of viewers coming for this virtual event. But as you mentioned at the beginning, on the 27th of April, we'll be hosting an AMI in partnership with America's Market Intelligence, and the BCCC will be promoting this event to talk about energy security and clean energy transition. And it's an amazing time to talk about this in Brazil. We'll have shortly the first draft of the invitation. We have great speakers from Canada, institutional investors, bankers, but also Canadian companies investing in Brazil that can talk about the potential and their experience in the Brazilian market. But we really want to bring to our audience what is really what makes Canada unique, and also what makes Brazil a unique opportunity for investment from energy security to the clean energy transition. We'll not talk too much about mining. I think we'll leave the mining for PDAC, but certainly around energy, renewable energy space, we'll have a lot of things to discuss with our panelists.
This is perfect. And we will be promoting the event, so stay tuned and don't miss this great discussion that's taking place on April 27th on the energy sector in Brazil. So thank you very much, Guillaume, for your time, for the support. Toronto Stock Exchange and the TSX Venture Exchange, it's a member of the BCCC and one of the platinum sponsors of the 16th edition of the Brazil-Canada Conference at PDAC series of events that I mentioned today earlier will be taking place in Toronto between June 13th and June 15th. And our events will be hosted at the TMX. We're very excited for that. So for more information about the events and for registration, please go to www.braskenchamber.org/PDAC 2022. And there you'll also be able to find the registration link for the energy event that Guillaume mentioned as well. Thank you everyone for watching us. Thank you, Guillaume, for being here. And we look forward to seeing you all in Toronto in June. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Karina, for the opportunity. Have a great day.